We'll move to question time. Senator Davey.
Thank you. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. Minister, following the budget, you claimed, I quote, "The targeted cost of living measures announced in the budget are expected to reduce inflation, with energy bill relief expected to directly reduce inflation by 0.5 percentage point in 24-25. Now, you and the Treasurer have both gone on to repeat this claim. Minister, the RBA's latest minutes confirm that they will look past these rebates when considering further interest rate increases, and that any reduction to inflation will be reversed by 2025. Minister, do you agree with the RBA that they should look past this policy because the impact of it will be reversed?
Thank you, Senator Davey. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much, and I welcome the opportunity to talk about our targeted cost of living measures that were calibrated carefully in the budget. As we said, from 1st of July this year, which is Monday this week, we will have tax cuts flowing into people's pay packets for every taxpayer in the country, and importantly, energy bill rebates and relief for every household in Australia, recognising that this is a big bill for most households, and we should be providing support where we can. Now, I think I read the minutes of the RBA board as well, which were released yesterday, and I think they're, obviously in the question using comments, not giving a comprehensive analysis, shall I say, of the minutes, which were quite extensive and went through not only the international environment but also what is happening here domestically. And I don't think it's any surprise, and I don't think anyone has pretended, in fact we dealt with this issue at estimates, that energy bill rebates were putting downward pressure on inflation in 24-25. That is the year of the focus of that effort, and that was the evidence of Treasury, it was the evidence of myself, and it's very consistent with the lines that we have, that the Treasurer and I have used since budget day. But we believe inflation, whilst it's moderating in welcome ways, it is remaining higher than we would like for longer than we would like, and we have made sensible investments to support households with some of those pressures as we get inflation back into the target range.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Davey, first supplementary.
Thank you. The RBA minutes also reveal that members acknowledged if inflation expectations were to rise materially from current levels, it could require significantly higher interest rates to bring inflation back to target. With the latest monthly data showing headline inflation accelerating to its highest rate in 6 months, isn't it true that the Albanese government's latest budget has only made the RBA's job harder?
I thank you, Senator Davey. Minister Gallagher.
No, I don't agree with that, and I think evidence from the governor about the fact that we are running surplus budgets, not only last year, but a surplus already delivered, but one that we will deliver shortly, is actually assisting. So I don't agree with that. I think you are very selectively or reinterpreting or providing your own analysis to the minutes. The minutes also go through arguments about maintaining the cash rate at the level it currently is, Senator Davey. So if you've read the minutes, you will realise, and they are a useful document that journalists and other commentators look at, there are arguments for and against decisions that the RBA bank or the bank board may take going forward. I think it's useful information. It sets out the challenges that many are considering, but no, I do not agree with your question.
Senator Davey, second supplementary.
Minister, with all due respect, will you now admit that your big spending budget has poured so much fuel on the inflationary fire that under Labor Australians will see any tax cuts and other so-called relief gobbled up by higher inflation and higher interest rates.
Thank you, Minister. Minister Gallagher. Order. Senator Watt.
Well, it is interesting. I haven't heard from those opposite, while they criticise spending, I haven't actually heard examples of what spending in the 24-25 year that they don't support. Is it the tax cuts? Is it the tax cuts that you... What is the Nationals telling... What are the Nationals telling the Liberal Party that your position is? Because we know you've won on nuclear. We know you've won on divestiture powers. I mean, here is the Australian Liberal Party actually moving policy to divest of businesses. I mean, this is the world we're living in, where the Nats tell the Liberals what their policy is, and then you all come in and implement it. So is it the tax cuts that you don't support? Is it the energy bill relief you don't support? You can't have it both ways. President, you cannot come in here, complain about spending, but then not explain which of those measures you don't support.
Thank you, Minister. Order. Senator Grogan.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Cost of living is the #1 issue that I hear from constituents, and I know that it's the #1 priority for the Albanese Labor government. The 1st of July was a really important day with a range of cost of living supports rolling out for Australians, including the tax cuts. But I have noticed that the opposition doesn't seem excited about Labor's tax cuts. And I'm wondering, perhaps they don't actually understand how important this policy will be for their constituents. So can the Minister help them out? Can the Minister just let us know how their constituents and all Australians will benefit from Labor's tax cuts?
Thank you, Senator Grogan. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. And can I, if I may, first also acknowledge the Honourable Speaker Ciole and welcome you to Australia, and we're very pleased to have our friends from Vanuatu with us today. And if we're a little, feisty, you'll understand this is the robust Australian democracy, Mr. Speaker. President, Senators, Senator Grogan, what I would say to you is that what we see from the 1st of July is tax cuts, a tax cut for every taxpayer in Australia. 13.6 million Australians, 2.9 million low-paid workers, and many of whom are also people who supported the coalition. And they must be scratching their heads wondering why it is that the coalition are so opposed to so many of the cost of living measures that the government has put in place. Because, of course, there is the tax cut for every Australian taxpayer, not just some. Not just some. On top of that, Senator Grogan, there's the $300 energy bill relief for every Australian household and $325 for small businesses. Remember when they were the party of small business? A freeze on the cost of PBS medicines for every Australian. A third consecutive pay rise for 2.6 million workers. And, they're not excited about that because, of course, they believe in low wages as a deliberate design feature of the Australian economy. On top of that, more funding to build more homes and an increase to paid parental leave, on top of cheaper childcare, fee-free TAFE and the biggest investment ever in expanding bulk billing. So they're more interested in shouting at the Labor Party than actually looking at what the people who vote for them want, which is relief for cost of living. Relief for cost of living. You would think that Senator Birmingham might be excited or interested in all the people in South Australia who
Thank you, Minister Wong. The time for answering
policy
has expired. Senator Grogan, first supplementary.
I thank the Minister for that response. Very helpful to have that laid out. Now, I know that the Albanese Labor government is working to ensure Australians are paying a fair price for their groceries and to ease the cost of living pressures. Can the Minister please tell the Senate what the government is doing and what the experts have said about why divestiture isn't the best way forward?
Thank you, Minister Wong. Thank you, Senator Grogan.
Thank you, President. Well, of course, this government is taking measures to strengthen the Code of Conduct for Food and Grocery, cracking down on anti-competitive behaviour, increasing penalties and asking the Consumer Watchdog to investigate. But what has been extraordinary this week is to watch Senator Nick McKim write the coalition supermarket policy. And what I'm really interested in, President, is how it is that the party that used to be the party of tax cuts, now has Senator McKim writing their competition policy. When did that happen? The Liberal Party used to be a party of people who prided themselves on being economic rationalists, who prided themselves on looking to the market. And now, Senator Nick McKim, I congratulate you, you're writing the Alternative Government's economic policy.
Order. Senator McKenzie. Senator Grogan, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. I thank the minister for that response. I read in The Australian this morning—
resume your seat. Senator McKenzie, 2 seconds before you called out again, I called you to order. Listen in silence. Senator Grogan, begin again and start the clock again.
Thank you, President. I read in The Australian this morning that Liberal MPs were ambushed over Mr Dutton's plan for new divestiture powers and are concerned that the policy will force up prices at the supermarket.
Order.
Can the minister please tell the Senate what are the best ways to ensure Australians pay a fair price at the checkout?
Yes.
Order on my left. Order. Order. Minister Gallagher. Order. Order. Oh, go right ahead, Senator Colbeck, after I've called order at least 4 times to completely ignore what I said. Senator Grogan, second supplementary. Oh, you're finished. Beg your pardon. Senator Ruston. Oh, sorry. This is what happens when you are so disorderly, Minister. Yeah.
Thank you, President. Obviously, we are very focused on working to deliver cost of living relief because we understand Australians are doing it hard. The Liberal Party is focused on adopting Senator Nick McKim's supermarket economic policy. But, of course, there are sensible people over there who understand what this really means. Earlier this year, Senator Dean Smith said divestiture powers are ill-conceived. Ill-conceived. Senator Hume said that there was concern whether they will actually decrease prices. I agree with you, Senator. Senator Kovacic said they could end up harming the people we are attempting to protect. Former Liberal Premier Jeff Kennett, this is madness. This is madness. I mean, this is what happens when a party forgets who they are and adopt a Greens economic policy. Congratulations, Senator McKim.
Senator
Welcome
McGrath.
to the Shadow Cabinet.
Thank you, Minister. Order across the chamber. Senator Ruston.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister for representing the Minister of Health, Senator Gallagher. 7-year-old Holly Zirk is bravely battling neuroblastoma. With the support of her mum, Leanne, and her dad, Travis, Holly has spent the last 13 months undergoing intense treatment, including multiple rounds of chemotherapy, which has left her seriously immunocompromised. High-risk neuroblastoma is the deadliest form of cancer affecting young children, with devastating survival rates of around 50%. However, a groundbreaking new treatment approved in the US, known as DFMO, has been shown to dramatically increase survival rates in children to around 75%. This could potentially save Holly's life and the lives of many other young children. Minister, will the government respond to the desperate calls of parents like Leanne and Travis with children battling high-risk neuroblastoma and provide urgent fast-track assistance with accessing the potential life-saving treatment in Australia?
Thank you, Senator Ruston. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Ruston for the question, and I acknowledge her interest in this, and it was a subject that we spoke about during budget estimates. And I can say that the Minister for Health is working closely with the drug company and others, including having a meeting with me earlier this week to talk about how to provide access to this new drug, this new treatment line that in the time between its approval now and its approval through the PBAC and PBS process, because it's not. I understand an application has been made and the TGA are giving it priority assessment, but that still takes some time, and I can imagine for Holly and for her parents and for all of the other children and their families who are diagnosed or undergoing treatment for neuroblastoma, that this important lifeline is really critical, and a decision as soon as possible is really important. So I can tell you that we are working on it. We are looking at ways and options to provide access to this medication, as you would understand. And I'm not taking away from the seriousness of the issue you raise, but as you would understand, there are a number of representations to governments about accessing new medications. I expect that will only increase as the kind of highly targeted and engineered treatment regimes continue to be developed for drugs and medications that aren't on the PBS. And so you know, we are very sympathetic. The Minister for Health is very sympathetic to looking at what we can do. I've had a meeting with him. Our departments are working together to look at what options are available.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Ruston, first supplementary.
Thank you. 1-year-old Harrison Richardson, also known as Hazzy, son of Tyler and Alex, has been diagnosed also with neuroblastoma. The Richardson family have been forced to start a GoFundMe page to raise funds for Hazzy, and the family will need to fly to the US to receive the treatment that Harrison needs. Is the government concerned that families are being forced to fundraise hundreds of thousands of dollars to access life-saving cancer treatment for their immunocompromised children overseas, when the drug could actually be made available safely and accessed here in Australia?
Thank you, Senator Ruston. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, I can completely understand Harrison's parents and family and friends doing everything that they can do to provide treatment for their son. Of course, I can as a parent. I completely understand that, and the government is keen to look at what we can do. There is the medical treatment overseas program that, for many of these children, is not an option, as I understand it. For some, it might be, but it doesn't provide, I guess. It doesn't provide the assistance universally. So we are looking at ways. I'm aware of Neuroblastoma Australia's public calling for this, as is the Minister for Health, who I believe has had a number of meetings about this, both internally to government and externally. As you know, there's been, I think, 201 new and amended listings on the PBS since 2022.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Ruston, second supplementary.
Thank you. As you say, Minister, the Health Minister has stated, even as late as the paper this morning, that your government is doing everything we can, as quickly as we can, to work with the supplier of DFMO. These children cannot afford to wait for this life-saving treatment. Compassionate access is within your power now. Are you considering this?
Thank you, Senator Ruston. Minister Gallagher.
Well, compassionate access it's really in the hands of the drug company, and that under the Compassionate Access Program, and we are working with them on that. They have also applied for urgent listing, and that has been assessed by the TGA. As those things are undertaken, I've told you already, we are looking at what mechanisms are available in order to provide assistance in the short term between its pending approval and listing on the PBS. But I would also say we do have to go through a process. I am repeatedly asked to provide access to medications that are not on the PBS, and for all worthy causes. And so this is something that the government has to go through proper consideration from, including what it means for other children with other illnesses who might want to access programs and children and adults that aren't on
Thank
the
you,
PBS.
Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Shoebridge.
Oh, thanks, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Defence, Minister Wong. The Australian Naval Nuclear Power Safety Bill being pushed by your government will make areas next to Perth and Adelaide nuclear waste dumping sites without any consultation with the local community or First Nations groups. If that's not bad enough, it will also allow the government to establish nuclear dump sites anywhere in Australia, with no requirement to ever consult with the local community or First Nations groups. Your government is rightly opposed to the Coalition's uncosted, unachievable and dangerous nuclear power plants. But how can you seriously take this position while also pushing $368 billion worth of nuclear submarines and their associated toxic nuclear waste dumps across Australia?
Thank you, Senator Shoebridge. Minister Wong.
Thank you. First, in relation to the bill, I don't agree with the language that Senator Shoebridge has utilised for that bill. In relation to the submarines, I'd make a few points. The first is that we have been clear that the submarines that we seek to acquire through AUKUS, including to be constructed here in years to come, are nuclear-powered, not nuclear-armed. And we have been very clear with the Australian people and also with our like-minded partners and our partners in the Pacific family. We've also said that we understand and recognise our obligations under international law, including the Non-Proliferation Treaty and the Treaty of Rarotonga. And whilst we're not a party to it, we'll continue also to act in consistent with basic principles of the Bangkok Treaty, which is in relation to Southeast Asia. So my point is there is a distinction between a nuclear-powered submarine and nuclear-armed. In relation to domestic power...
Senator Shoebridge.
It's a question of relevance. My question was about toxic waste, not nuclear arms. And the minister's deliberately not addressing the toxic waste and the association with the Coalition's policy.
Thank you, Senator Shoebridge. The minister is being relevant to your question. Minister, please continue.
Thank you. You also made comments about the submarines, Senator Shoebridge, and I was responding to that because I'm conscious of the importance of there not being misinformation about the submarines in the public realm. We believe AUKUS is a core pillar of our national security policy to protect the nation. I think the bill to which you are referring is about the establishment of a new regulatory framework, including an independent regulator, to ensure nuclear safety within the nuclear-powered submarine enterprise and over the life cycle of our submarines.
Thank you, Minister Wong. Senator Shoebridge, first supplementary.
President, your government's Australian Naval Nuclear Power Safety Bill also permits nuclear waste to be dumped in Australia from AUKUS submarines, including UK and US nuclear submarines. How is it possible for your government to propose a law that will allow foreign nations to dump high-level nuclear waste in Australia while pretending to be outraged by the Coalition's nuclear power plants?
Thank you, Senator Shoebridge. Minister Wong.
Again, the hyperbole is not fact. We have said that Australia will not be responsible for accepting and disposing of intermediate or high-level radioactive waste from other countries. The Deputy Prime Minister has made clear we will manage low-level radioactive waste responsibly and consistently with nuclear safety standards, as we do with other low-level radioactive waste generated across the country for medical or research purposes. Low-level radioactive waste generated from the routine maintenance of the submarines, including through rotational force waste activities, will be managed at HMS Stirling. The management of the spent fuel from our own conventionally nuclear-powered submarines is not expected to be required until the 2050s, and obviously governments will go through the process of dealing with that issue.
Senator Shoebridge, second supplementary.
Thanks, President. keeping in mind that the nuclear waste from nuclear submarines is vastly more dangerous and toxic than civilian nuclear waste, can you explain why the Albanese Labor government rejects nuclear power and waste except for when it's in a submarine floating off the coast or has been dumped on shore from one of those floating reactors? How do you square that circle?
Thank you, Senator Shoebridge. Minister Wong.
I am interested in seeing Senator Shoebridge.
Order.
I'm interested in seeing...
Order. Senator McKenzie, you were not invited to answer this question. I would ask you to listen in silence. If you wish to make a contribution, find another place during the Senate sitting to do so. Minister Wong, please continue.
I am interested to see Senator Shoebridge effectively parroting the same attack that the coalition made about this. So just say something again about the Greens coalition alliance. It's going well. There are two things I would say to you. One is we care about the safety of the nation, Senator Shoebridge. When you finished it, would you like?
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Shoebridge, you are out of order. Minister Wong, please continue.
We've made the decision in relation to nuclear-powered submarines because of the circumstances Australia faces and because national security comes first. Secondly, in relation to nuclear-powered...
Order.
Secondly, in relation to nuclear power, as you know, the Coalition's plan will deliver the most expensive power in the world in a number of decades' time. It does not make economic sense before we even get to the waste issue.
Senator Stewart.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Health, Senator Gallagher. Medicare was established 40 years ago by the Hawke Labor government. Since 1984, bulk billing has delivered affordable healthcare for all Australians. Can the Minister please outline what the Albanese Labor government is doing to strengthen Medicare and how these initiatives are providing cost of living relief and making it easier for Australians to see a doctor?
Thank you, Senator Stewart. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Stewart for the question on this really important issue, which I know she cares so deeply about, which is access to affordable health care for all Australians. In the budget, we introduced the second biggest increase to the Medicare rebate across the board in the last 30 years. Wow. The biggest increase to the Medicare rebate in the last 30 years was last year. And so over just 2 years, we've increased the Medicare rebate by twice as much as those opposite managed in 9 years. Wow. In 9 years, because we care about making sure that people can afford to go and access health care in the community, which is primarily through their general practitioner. At the time of the last election, the Health Minister, Mark Butler, said general practice was in the most parlous state in the 40-year history of Medicare. Bulk billing was falling off a cliff because of a 6-year freeze on Medicare rebates, which is why we tripled the bulk billing incentive from the 1st of November last year in the largest investment in bulk billing in the history of Medicare. And in the 7 months since we have tripled that investment, we've seen a turnaround in bulk billing, a national increase of 3.4 percentage points, from 75.6% of all GP visits bulk billed in October to 79% in May, which translates to about an extra 2 million additional estimated visits of Australians to their GP. Bulk billing has increased in every state and territory. In Tasmania, it's up over 8%, ACT up 5.5%, South Australia 5%, Northern Territory up 4.8%, WA 4.2%, Queensland 3.4%, Victoria 3% and New South Wales up 2.7%. This shows that our investments are working.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Stewart, first supplementary.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Minister. A very timely reminder that only Labor can be trusted with Medicare. Yeah. The government designed a budget that put downward pressure on inflation.
Order. Senator Henderson, order. Order across the chamber. Minister Watt, Order. Order. Senator Watt. Order. Senator Ayres, when I call order, it applies to you. Senator Henderson, I've called you. Senator Henderson, you're not in a debate with me. Order. Senator Stewart, I'm going to invite you to begin your question again and to reset the clock.
Thank you. Thank you, President. The government designed a budget that put downward pressure on inflation while providing cost of living relief to all Australians. Can the minister please update the Senate on how the government's policies to make medicines cheaper are providing cost of living relief that Australians need now?
Thank you, Senator Stewart. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much. I thank Senator Stewart for another great question. So building on our investments in Medicare, which is all about people being able to see their GP and have Medicare support them while they do that, so get to Medicare without out-of-pocket expenses. But under our government, we've also made a number of reforms to make medicines cheaper. So under our government, people now pay no more than $31.60 for medicines on the PBS. And in our first 3 months of governing, we slashed the maximum amount that millions of pensioners would pay for their medicines each year by 25%. In our first 12 months, we delivered the biggest cut to the price of medicines in the 75-year history of the PBS. So biggest investment in Medicare, biggest investment in the PBS, and we're seeing now that people are getting access to cheaper medicines. They're getting access to 60-day supply where it's needed. And we have, in this budget, also made sure that PBS medicines remain affordable.
Senator Stewart, second supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. I know that cheaper medicines is making a real difference, especially for those who have chronic illnesses. The budget also included additional funding for more Medicare urgent care clinics across the country. How are the Medicare urgent care clinics helping Australians to access affordable urgent care when they need it?
Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much, Senator Stewart, for that supplementary, because Senator Stewart is right. We've opened 58 Medicare urgent care clinics across Australia. They're now open, seeing patients. Australians can walk in and receive urgent care quickly and for free. There have been over 494,000 visits to Medicare UCCs across Australia since they opened. We know that 1 in 4 visits are from someone aged under 15. Over 1 in 3 have been outside of regular working hours, and half of all of those presentations from people said that they would otherwise have gone to a hospital emergency department. So not only are they getting seen, not only is it free, not only can they walk in and get their kids seen out of hours, we're also making sure that we're taking pressure off busy emergency departments. So Medicare, PBS and Medicare urgent care clinics really show how important we place health.
Answering has expired. Senator Hanson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Senator Wong. The Australian Energy Market Operator's 2023 Inputs, Assumptions and Scenarios report shows that your government's energy transition plan will run new, massive transmission lines through prime agricultural land and national parks, with costly, unreliable wind and solar projects planned for an area covering up to a third of Queensland. Why has your government failed to properly inform and consult with the affected communities and landowners about the impact and risk to their loss of livelihoods and land rights?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Thank you to Senator Hanson for...
Order.
Thank you to Senator Hanson for the question. And first, it is true that there is a very, very big change in Australia's energy system that is required, not just to deal with the transition to 2050, but to ensure that Australians have access to the cheapest form of new energy, which is renewables. And it is true that our transmission system is very much predicated on what we've had for the last 50 years, which is large coal-fired power stations closer to urban areas, or able to service large urban areas with the transmission system we have. So there is a big change. In relation to consultation, I think I've been asked about this before, and I'll see if, while I'm on my feet, someone can find some additional information for you. I do understand. Well, I'm very upfront about this, Senator Cash. Thank you. There you go. What I would say is it is important that social licence for this change continues to be sought, and this change does require engagement, and I respect the fact that there are communities and landowners who are supportive, and also there are landowners and communities who are not. And there is also the importance of engaging with First Nations leaders as well. So what I would say to you is there is consultation that is happening. I accept that this is something that requires ongoing discussion.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Hanson, first supplementary.
Minister, what feasibility studies have been done with regards to the impact on communities, landowners and the agricultural sector and the environment, flora and fauna?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister Wong.
The first approvals in relation to environmental requirements, which are some of the things that you've referred to, would continue to be required under relevant state and federal legislation. I'll confirm if my answer is not correct, Senator Hanson, but that's my understanding, is that you still have the regulatory framework in relation to environmental approvals. The social licence question, I think, is a different question. I can say to you that in the last budget the government invested about $20 million in 3 different initiatives. One, strengthening the governance of the Energy Infrastructure Commissioner to enhance its independence, its ability to address misinformation, support First Nations peoples and improve complaint resolution. Secondly, working with a diverse range of stakeholders on the introduction of a developer rating scheme to encourage best practice and to foster transparency and trust, and exploring options for better delivering benefits to the region.
Senator Hanson, second supplementary.
That's about the feasibility studies, but my other question is, will native title holders be treated the same as non-Indigenous Australians with respect to compensation, legal funding or denial of access to the property in the construction of solar panels, wind farms and transmission lines?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister Wong. Senator Thorpe, silence.
Senator, whether it's in relation to these projects or any other projects, whatever arrangements are in place under state, territory or federal legislation for engagement with First Nations communities and native title holders remain. There is, I think, a separate issue about which you have been advocating for, which is ensuring that regional communities in the Broad are consulted about what is occurring in their communities and also gain the benefits. And the last point I was going to make was one of the measures that is being looked at by the government is whether or not you could deliver direct bill relief and additional benefits in regions most affected by renewable energy developments. In other words, can you provide some economic benefit, some way of demonstrating the economic benefit these communities are providing to the country in the region itself. And these are all matters the government is very serious.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Cash.
Thank you. And my question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Yesterday the Senate passed legislation which the opposition voted for and fully supports that will enable the most vulnerable female textile workers in particular to de-emerge from the militant bullying, thuggish and dysfunctional CFMEU. But in February, your government voted against an amendment by Senator Lambie that proposed almost identical legislation. Minister, why did it take the outrageous bullying demands of CFMEU boss John Setka against the AFL for your government to finally introduce this legislation?
Senator Watt. Minister Wong. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Senator Cash. Senator Cash, first, I know that Senator Cash wants to make a suggestion about Mr. Setka. Sorry. No, I'm just trying to maintain focus. No, I'm trying to focus.
Order. Order.
I'm happy for the clock to be reset. I'm happy for the clock to be reset.
Order.
If that, no, it's not that. I was responding to the interjections from behind. I was trying to maintain focus.
I would ask all senators to listen in silence. Senator Cash. Senator Cash, I've just asked for silence. Minister Wong.
Well, I worked for the furnishing division of the CFMEU, and I helped organise many workers in the textile
Wong,
sector.
Please resume your seat. Senator Cash, you're not in a dialogue with the minister. You've asked your question. It's now your opportunity to listen in silence, and that's what I've asked you to do. Minister, please continue.
Thank you. First, in relation to Mr. Setka, I would make 2 points. Those opposite might talk a lot about it. It was this Prime Minister who ensured one of the first things he did as leader of our party was to expel John Setka from the party.
Order. Minister, please continue.
Thank you. One of the first things Mr Albanese did as Labor leader was to expel Mr Setka.
Senator Cash, Senator McKenzie, you are both being incredibly disrespectful. Senator Cash, Senator McKenzie, you've asked your question. Listen in silence. Minister, please continue.
One of the first things that occurred when Mr Albanese took the leadership of the Labor Party was the expulsion of Mr Setka from the Labor Party. And you might recall Mr Setka did take the Prime Minister or the Labor leader and in fact the entire National Executive to court over the expulsion, and it was the...
Senator Cash, order. Minister, please continue.
It was the right decision. The demerger legislation will allow members of the manufacturing division, which I have been a part of that union, to determine their own course free from distractions which have nothing to do with the core business of unions. I know that Senator Cash wishes to prosecute this.
Senator O'Sullivan.
Because she is very anti-union, and I think she's proud to say it. But we are not.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Cash, second supplement. Beg your pardon, first supplementary.
Thank you. And will the Prime Minister unequivocally condemn CFMEU leader John Setka for the bullying threats he made to disrupt AFL infrastructure projects if they do not sack their head of umpiring, Stephen McBurney? What action is the government taking to ensure the CFMEU cannot and does not act on this threat?
Thank you, Senator Cash. Minister Wong.
2 points. I think the Prime Minister has already made his views clear on this, as has...
Minister Cash, Senator Cash, I don't know what more I can say to ask you, to request you to be silent. You are being incredibly disrespectful towards me in my role as the President. I've called you to order a number of times and you completely ignored that. I'm asking you to listen in silence. Minister Wong. Please continue,
President,
Minister Wong.
what I would say is the Prime Minister has made his views on that clear. The Prime Minister has also made his views on Mr Setka's behaviour more broadly very clear by his actions. The Minister has made the government's views clear on this, and I know that Senator Cash does desperately want to use this in order to prosecute an anti-union agenda. What we know on this side is Mr Setka does not represent the heart and soul of the trade union movement.
Senator Cash, second supplementary.
Thank you. And does the Prime Minister agree that neither the Labor Party nor the Australian Greens, who even voted yesterday to protect CFMEU thugs rather than vulnerable textile workers, should accept donations from the CFMEU?
Or help on polling booths.
Thank you, Senator Cash. Minister Wong.
My recollection is, and it comes to reform of donations law, that it is the Labor Party which has provided and more transparency, has engaged in reform, which, as I recall, was unilaterally. Thank you. The Minister reminds me that, in fact, we disclosed at a lower threshold than those opposite, and as I recall, the Cabinet of which you were a part, Senator, did not wish to go down the path of more disclosure and transparency on electoral reform and campaign donations. So we all understand what you're doing, Senator. We are all understanding of what you are doing, Senator Cash. I was pleased that we saw that legislation pass yesterday.
Order.
It is a good thing for workers. It is a good thing for the members of the manufacturing division, and unlike you, we remain supporters of the trade union movement.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Thorpe.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Leader of the Labor Party in the Senate, Minister Wong. This year we have heard the government say they can't move forward on key issues, including human rights and First Peoples justice, without bipartisan support. They told me this was the reason they could not support my bill implementing the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Why does the government need the Liberal Party's permission before you can move forward on important reform when you've got a majority in the House and a progressive crossbench that would support good reform in the Senate? What more does it take?
Thank you, Senator Thorpe. Minister Wong.
Well, thank you, President, and I thank Senator Thorpe, and I acknowledge her support for a number of government bills, but I would make a couple of points. One is we do seem to have seen quite a lot of engagement between the Coalition and the Greens, so I'm not sure the premise of your question. No, Senator, you asked about majorities. And we've seen a fair example in this sitting fortnight of a majority between your former colleagues and the opposition. So I would make... No, that's true, but I'm making the point to you. You said we have a progressive majority in this place. I'm not sure that is always the case. Secondly, obviously there are a number of things that you've asked about. Can I just go with the anti-discrimination legislation? I think you went to that. Obviously this has been a very divisive debate previously in Australia. The Prime Minister's view was, given the importance of social cohesion at this time, this was not a time for an ongoing partisan divisive debate. We saw such a debate and the effects of that on our communities.
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Thorpe.
President, United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People,
Senator
Labor
Thorpe,
voted it down with all their First Nations members.
Resume your seat.
Shame job.
Senator Thorpe, you're now debating and the minister is being relevant to your question. I will ask the minister to continue. Please continue, Minister Wong.
Thank you, Chair. The brief I have, Senator, in relation to UNDRIP, and I will come back to you if this is not correct, is that the government is currently considering the report handed down by the Joint Standing Committee. Obviously, the government remains committed to holding the values and principles laid out in the declaration, and we understand the importance of empowering Aboriginal communities to participate in decision-making processes. That does improve outcomes. I don't have anything additional in relation to UNDRIP other than that brief. I would make the broader point that certainly in one of the pieces of
Thank
legislation you
Minister.
referred to, that we regard that as important.
As Senator Thorpe, first supplementary.
Labor candidates always say change is made from within, and that if you want Labor to be better, you should vote for a Labor member. How can progressive members make change from inside the Labor Party when we see the length your party goes to silence and exile your own caucus members who hold progressive views?
Thank you, Senator Thorpe. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. I reject the suggestions at the conclusion of that question, Senator Thorpe. The second thing I would say to you, my parents married when the White Australia policy was still in place.
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Thorpe.
Relevance. Don't need to know the history of the minister's upbringing.
Senator Thorpe, the minister is being relevant to your question. Minister Wong, please continue.
I'm responding to your point that about change. My parents married when the White Australia policy was still in place. It was a Labor government which removed the last vestiges of the White Australia policy. It was a Labor government which introduced the Racial Discrimination Act. It was a Labor government which introduced the Sex Discrimination Act. It was a Labor government which introduced the Native Title legislation.
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Please resume your seat. Order across the chamber. Order. 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 Minister, did you wish to continue, or have you finished your contribution?
My point. Are we doing the withdrawal, or are we doing the finishing of the question?
Order. I'll remind senators on my left that this is Senator Thorpe's question. Senator Thorpe is entitled to hear. Order. Order. Senator Thorpe is entitled to hear the response. Senator Henderson.
Point of order, President. Senator Ayres just made an unparliamentary remark, which I won't repeat, and I would ask him to withdraw it.
Senator Ayres, if you made an unparliamentary remark, I'd ask you to thank you very much. I'm going to ask for silence while Minister Wong continues. Minister Wong.
The history of this country shows what change Labor governments deliver.
Senator Thorpe, second supplementary.
We know public support for the two major parties is collapsing fast. Instead of the tired old Labor Party, it is the future of progressive change going to be driven by community independence and a bigger crossbench. Tell me how you are going to make change and bring justice to First Nations people with silencing your own First people in your caucus.
Thank you, Senator Thorpe. Minister Wong.
Again, I think that's a really disappointing thing to say, Senator, because I find I have been in this caucus with members of our First Nations caucus for a number of years, and I can say to you, one, no one is silent. They are proud, principled advocates for their communities and their people. And I have learnt a lot. I have learnt a lot.
Thank you, Senator Thorpe.
As a leader and as a representative from Senator Dodson, Senator McCarthy, and also Senator Stewart, as well as my
Minister
friendship
Wong,
with
please
Ms
resume your seat. Senator Thorpe. Senator Thorpe, I have respectfully called you to order, and I would ask you to listen in silence for the remainder of the minister's response to your question. Minister Wong.
I don't agree with your proposition, and I'm immensely proud to...
Senator Thorpe. Senator Thorpe, I've called you to order. Minister Wong.
I am both proud and humbled to be in a caucus with our First Nations caucus.
Senator Pratt.
Minister representing the Minister for Finance, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government, Minister Watt. Australians have been feeling the impact of cost of living pressures at our checkouts, with regional Australians impacted by supermarket price rises even more. So how is the Albanese government helping all Australians cope with cost of living pressures, including getting a fair deal at the supermarket? And why is ensuring Australians can earn more and keep more of what they earn so important to delivering cost of living relief?
Thank you, Senator Pratt. Minister Watt.
Thanks very much, Senator Pratt, and I know you've done a lot of great work on this issue recently in committee, and the Albanese government does know that Australians are doing it tough, and that's why our policies are designed to provide real cost of living help for everyone, including in our regions. Every Australian taxpayer is getting a tax cut under Labor, not just some, and our $300 energy bill relief is beginning to flow. 2.6 million low-paid workers are getting their third consecutive pay rise, backed by this Labor government. And importantly, we're helping bring down prices at the checkout. The price of fruit and vegetables in Australia has fallen in 3 consecutive quarters, but we know more is needed. And that's why we're strengthening the Food and Grocery Code of Conduct. We're cracking down on anti-competitive behaviour from supermarkets so families and farmers get a fair go. This includes making the code mandatory and fines of up to $10 million for supermarkets caught doing the wrong thing. All of these measures are designed to make a real difference at the checkout for Australians, and not one of them was taken in the 10 years of Liberal National Party government, and they haven't learned now they're in opposition. Because what we saw yesterday from the Coalition was another absolute shambles of a policy announcement from Mr Dutton. After opposing every single cost of living measure, we have delivered tax cuts, cheaper power, cheaper medicines, cheaper childcare, more housing. His big cost of living idea is to maybe sell Coles stores to Woolies and sell Woolies stores to Coles. What a genius idea! That's really going to help supermarket competition. That's really going to help those prices at the checkout. Those CEOs of those big supermarkets must be rubbing their hands with glee, driving prices up, especially in regional Australia, to expand their profits more. Coles becoming Woolies, Woolies becoming Coles, Nationals becoming Greens, Greens becoming Nationals. What an absolute joke you have become.
The time for... Thank you. Order. 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 Senator Mackenzie, once again, after I've called order at least 4 times, you continue to interject. You are being incredibly disorderly towards me. Senator Pratt, first supplementary.
President, I've heard a lot of commentary in this chamber about supermarkets, but my constituents tell me consistently they want less talk and more real action to help them with their grocery bills. So why is the Albanese government's strong and considered approach to supermarkets the right way to support Australians to respond to cost of living pressures at the checkout?
Thank you, Senator Pratt. Minister Watt.
Well, thank you, Senator Pratt. Well, it is the right way because, unlike the Coalition, it isn't going to drive up prices at the checkout. Just like their divisive nuclear policy, this announcement yesterday was just another chaotic announcement from Mr Dutton and the Coalition, but this time it was driven by those giants of economic policy, the Greens political party. Once again, Mr Dutton and the Liberals have been rolled by the Nationals, who've then been rolled by the Greens. Twice in a fortnight, we have seen the National Party tail wagging the Liberal Party dog, and I hear Senator McGrath over there, who's now a member of the National Liberal Party, not the Liberal National Party.
Minister Watt. Senator Wong.
Just wondering if we could perhaps hear the minister. He's quite loud, but point of order. Point of order.
Thank you, Minister Wong.
Point of order on order. Senator Watt has one of the louder voices in this place, and I'm sitting here and I can barely hear him.
Order. 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 As I'm sure you're aware, Senator Wong, I have called the chamber to order since I got into the chair at 2 p.m, and I am sadly today not having much luck in getting the chamber to come to order. But let's try again. Minister, please continue.
Thank you, President. So twice in a fortnight we see the National Party wagging the Liberal dog. It really does seem as if the member for Maranoa, Mr Littleproud, the Leader of the Nationals, is becoming the mini Morrison of the new opposition. One day he's the Shadow Energy Minister, spouting nuclear policy, driving nuclear policy. The next day he's out there spouting supermarket policy. We've even got the Nationals leading out on economic policy, and not a single Liberal Shadow Minister can get a look in on it. No wonder Senator McKenzie is looking so happy they're taking over.
Resume your seat. Senator Pratt, second supplementary.
President, West Australians have welcomed the government's work to crack down on anti-competitive behaviour in supermarkets as part of broader cost of living measures. How is the government providing meaningful relief to Australian families at Australian checkouts?
Thank you, Senator Pratt. Resume your seat. Order. Order. Senator Birmingham, order. Order across the chamber. Senator Pratt, please. Minister Watt.
Well, Senator Pratt, I can certainly tell you that it's not by taking competition policy advice from the Greens political party, because when the Nationals and Greens are dictating the coalition's economic policy, you know the Liberals are in trouble. And as we heard, today's Australian had several unnamed Liberal MPs expressing angst over their supermarkets policy. I wonder who that could have been. Could it have been?
Senator Watt, resume your seat. Minister Watt, please continue.
Who were those unnamed Liberals in the Australian today? Could it have been Senator Dean Smith, who in February said divestiture powers were ill-conceived in the Australian context? Could it have been Senator Hume, who has said there's always concern with divestiture powers whether they will actually decrease prices? Now, former Victorian
Minister
Liberal...
Watt, Minister Watt, please resume your seat. Senator McDonald.
The question was, what is the government doing to reduce supermarket prices?
Thank you. Order. 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 Senator Watt, I will direct you back to the question. Thank you.
So now the Nationals don't want to hear about their own supermarkets policy that they invented. We even had former Victorian Liberal Premier Jeff Kennett say that this policy was madness that would not bring down prices at the checkout. Imagine being called mad by Jeff Kennett. That is the stage the modern Liberal Party has got to. The Liberal moderates, if you want a balanced budget, come over here.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Wong.
Thank you. I ask that further questions be placed on notice.